Fantastic.
All right. So I want to start by saying that first I want to say welcome. And tonight's event is being recorded. We're really excited to have all of you here and hope that everyone is very eager to be involved and participate. And I want to invite everyone to turn their cameras on and keep them on throughout the evening. This isn't a light topic, and we want the experience to be as intimate and interactive as possible. And while everyone's cameras are on, we are going to start by taking a virtual group photo. And Kate Blackburn, our marketing extraordinaire, is actually going to lead us through that process of smiling, saying cheese.
Yes. Hi, everybody. It's so good to see you. I am going to count down, and we are so happy to have enough people where there's multiple screens. So I'm going to take a few screenshots, but I need your biggest smile for the next 30 seconds. All right. So first round, ready? 3, 2, 1. Okay. Give me 1 second. And I'm going to do the next page. All right. One more time. Ready? Big smiles. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
My face was frozen, so I hope that you got the smile. Some really we're gonna have an awesome crowd. Good afternoon, Nadia. Good afternoon, Jessica, Allison, Diana. Good afternoon, and all. If I butcher your name, please forgive me. Please correct me, because I do believe that pronouncing names correctly is almost mandatory. Well, I'm sorry, it is mandatory. Good afternoon, Salamakter. Is that how you pronounce the name, Miss?
It's Salma.
Salma, got it, Salma. All right, so you know what? I just made it just way harder than what it is. That is what we do when we are from Kansas City. So, all right, Salma, very nice to meet you. Vladimir, nice to meet you. Rebecca, Janice, Kelly, Jocelyn, Kevin, Dulce, which she's in the running to having the coolest name ever, because I mean, who doesn't like that name? Brenda, good afternoon, Isabella, Allison, Ashley, and everyone else that I missed. I'll be definitely saying, calling your name today.
Awesome. Thanks, LeRon, for the thorough welcome. I'm just going to go over a couple of introductions and then logistics very quickly. Just want to say that, United Way's history is rooted in bringing diverse groups of people together to learn and to grow and to take action. And so our role as convener continues to be a priority today, probably more than ever before. And in 2020, Amanda Furlong, Jessica Carlino, and I began meeting on a monthly basis to share best practices and to just connect. And each of us oversee a United Way young professional group in Connecticut, in Middlesex, Waterbury, and Central and Northeastern Connecticut. And tonight's event was born out of these conversations. So we are really thrilled to be hosting this event together, and also excited to have our local young professional groups, the Urban League of Greater Hartford and the Metro Hartford Alliance's HYPE, Hartford's Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs, as well as our partner, the YWCA Hartford region. And these groups are experts in leading conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion as well. And we are also excited to have leaders from our respective organizations here with us tonight, demonstrating our commitment to these conversations. And so just some quick logistics. Due to the size of the group, we ask that everybody remain on mute unless prompted. And we really encourage you to be active in the chat by posting your reflections, your contributions, your comments, questions, reactions. We are going to go into 2 breakout rooms, or breakout twice. We're going to go into breakout rooms, and both of them are going to be really brief. So you may have to skip over the introductions and just jump right into the prompt that LeRon's going to provide before we go into each breakout room. We're going to have only 7 minutes. So please, this is the space for you to come off of mute and share something, and encourage and make sure that there's room for everyone in your breakout room to contribute. And then when you come back into the main group, please share some of the key takeaways in this main chat. And we plan to share the chat with all of you who attended after the event. And only the chat in the main event gets recorded. So please come back and share those things that were talked about in your breakout room that are profound or thought-provoking, or you feel the group can benefit from. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Carlino, who oversees the Emerging Leaders for United Way of Greater Waterbury. And again, she is the one who is responsible for introducing us to LeRon. And so Jessica, go ahead.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everyone. I have the privilege of introducing our keynote speaker for this evening, LeRon Barton. LeRon is originally from Kansas City, which he mentioned a bit earlier, and currently resides in sunny California and San Francisco. He has quite the list of accomplishments, from writing 2 books. One's entitled Straight Dope, a 360-degree look into American drug culture, and the second is All We Really Need Is Love, to writing essays on race, mass incarceration, politics, business, tech, and dating that have appeared in numerous publications. LeRon is an international speaker and has had the opportunity to share his talk entitled How I Overcame My Fear of Stuttering at a TEDx event. He has also interviewed on over 100 podcasts, so being a conversationalist, which is the focus of tonight, is certainly a strong suit of his. I wanted to share more about LeRon beyond a list of his impressive professional accomplishments. So I reached out and asked for 3 fun facts to share with you all tonight. When prompted, he shared that 1, his favorite movie is Enter the Dragon, which I had to look up, to be honest. I had never heard of it.
Disappointed.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. I had to be honest though. The second one was that he can spend all day in book and record stores, which as an author and a podcaster, this completely made sense to me. The third was that his favorite animal is the Galapagos turtle. And I looked that up too, because I was just curious to learn more, and had no idea that they weigh between 250 and 500 pounds and live over 100 years. So great animal choice, LeRon. Now that we have a bit more background on him, both professionally and personally, I will turn it over to him so that he can share a bit more about himself, and then we can get this evening started. Thanks for being with us, LeRon.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you all for coming. My name is LeRon Barton. I am from Kansas City, Missouri. I currently live in San Francisco, California. I've been writing since the age of like 7 or 8, and I've been also stuttering since the age of 5. I published 2 books, as you said before, Straight Dope, a 360-degree look into American drug culture, as well as All We Really Need Is Love, stories of dating, relationships, heartbreak, and marriage. Because as much as I was fascinated with why people, why America was so inundated with drugs, I needed to kind of shift that and kind of talk about something a bit lighter, because the 4th thing that people may not know about me is that I'm a sucker for a good love story. So it was really awesome talking to people about that. I'm a 3-time TED speaker. My first TEDx was in 2018. It was called How I Overcame the Fear of My Stutter. In 2020, I did 2 additional TEDx's. One was called The Power of Sharing Your Story, because I believe that everyone should have the platform, the ability, and just the way to share their story. And then my 3rd piece was called The Vital Importance of Documenting the Moment. What that talk was about is that I felt that as an African-American male, whenever we are shot or attacked in the media by law enforcement, the narrative gets spun. So my purpose of doing that talk was to encourage us to take control of the narrative, to right that to right that wrong and to create our own media. I'm really excited about this talk today. It's going to be about microaggressions. You know, this is a subject that I believe is very important, not only in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives. What we'll also discuss is also racism, a concept that I learned about called impact versus intent, how we can call out the problem, and what is allyship. The expectations of this talk is that this is going to be an honest conversation. You know, I want everyone to feel as if they can ask questions, that they can make a comment, and that no one is going to be offended. This is not only a safe space, but this is a brave space. And what I mean by that is that, again, feel free to express yourself, but let's be mindful of our language. If someone's talking, please do not interrupt them, because that's just being rude. With a subject like this, many times people have not had the chance to talk about it amongst their peers or just amongst people, period. So let's give people grace, and let's also give people a chance to express themselves. And most importantly, let's get involved. And the reason why that I stress that last part is because, look, we're on Zoom meetings probably, 2, 3, 4 hours out of a day. I'm on at least two. This is actually my third Zoom call, and Zoom meetings can just get very boring if you're just staring at the screen. So what I like to do when I'm giving these talks is I'm just going to call on people randomly. Like, I'm going to ask, okay, Jackie, what did you think about that? Do you have anything to add? Or Jessica, have you ever thought of it this way? I really want people to get involved, because that's how things become fun and it's just not stale. So feel free to jump in, ask a question. You can use the chat, or you can unmute me, because I just want everyone to feel welcome. And with that, let's get into the first breakout room. So the question that I want to pose to everyone is, when people see you, what is the first thing they see? What is the first thing that comes to mind when someone sees a Brian or when someone sees Marie? So if we could get into the breakout room and kind of talk about that, and we'll come back. Because I had a really awesome breakout room. I think my breakout room was probably the best. Kelly and Icarus, we had some really awesome conversation, and y'all just kind of missed out. So I don't know. Okay, well, let me know when everyone returns, and we can.
I think we're good to go, LeRon.
Fantastic. Okay, let's go to let's bring up slide 8 for me, please.
While we're waiting for Rebecca to bring up the slides, as we mentioned, feel free to leave your thoughts in the chat.
Absolutely. And again, like any comment that you do not feel comfortable in speaking vocally, you can put it in the chat, and I'll definitely address it. So we'll just wait. Fantastic. So does anyone know what a microaggression is? And feel free to jump in, like, to see where everyone is at.
It's like little backhanded compliments, or just like little ways of diminishing another person or their contribution.
Okay, all right, that's a very good definition. Isabella, do you have an idea of what a microaggression is?
I was thinking along those lines, something like when somebody says something to you, you kind of react because
Sure.
you probably weren't thinking about it,
Right. Okay. All right. Very good. And one last person, Karen M. What do you think a microaggression is?
Similar to what was said, something subtle, but with a hint of it has an undertone of you could say sorry, like inflicting a bit of pain, but subtly doing it and
Got
not
it.
realizing it, maybe.
Yeah, maybe sarcasm.
Bingo. Like I love those. I love those definitions. Can we have slide 9, please? So all of those definitions were right on the money. What it's a microaggression is clinically defined as a subtle, unintentional form of a prejudice. As the lady said, it's often a offhanded comment, a backhanded compliment. It's not meant to be vicious or malicious, but it lands that way. The term microaggression was coined in the 1970s by Harvard Medical School psychiatrist Chester Pierce. He, by coining that definition, the reason for that is that he noticed the interactions between white high school students and black high school students, and just how there were these subtle little jabs that were given. The thing about microaggressions is that they happen daily. It could be something. It's like, oh, where are you from? Oh, well, I'm from Toledo. No, where are you really from? Or, you could be asking somebody that, let's say this person is from Latin America, or if they're from India. Your English is very good. That's a micro aggression. On an average, I probably receive one or two a day. Some of the more popular microaggressions that I receive is that when people hear me talk, they will say, "You are so articulate," and I just think about that, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, I did go to college, you know what I mean? I wrote a couple books. So like, but it's almost like you're very surprised that that I can actually speak in the King's English. So, that's something that I face on a daily basis. And the thing is that the person doesn't realize how bad that is, but they mean it in the best way, in the best way possible. Another more, I guess, malicious microaggression that I receive is that, I'm walking down the street, I lock eyes with a white woman, she sees me and she crosses the street, or she clutches her purse. That happens more often than not, and maybe I am scary looking, like, maybe I do look like a criminal. I mean, Jocelyn, like, I don't think so, but that happens on a daily basis. Now, to that woman that did that, she may be thinking, well, look, I'm about to just protect myself, don't take this personally, but you may attack me, but still, it's still very very painful. Let's go to slide 9, please. So I'm just curious. So I would love to hear from everyone. What type of microaggressions do you receive? I mean, does anyone ever ask, where are you really from? Or, as a Black woman, do people ask to touch your hair? Or if you are from Asia, are people surprised that you know how to speak English? Or are you associated with something that is stereotypical? Oh, okay, so someone put, you're beautiful for a plus size woman, like, as if plus size women can't be beautiful. Like, what's the model? Ashley Graham, she's gorgeous, and she's a plus size woman. I'm just curious, Vladimir, have you ever experienced any microaggressions?
Absolutely. One is like, you're really cool for a gay dude, something like that.
That's so crazy. Like, I have two of my best guy friends in San Francisco are gay. And we hang out in the Castro pre-COVID all the time. So,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or you're not like other gay guys, yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Or, you get the hand gesture. You're not like this kind of gay guy, so, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, man, like, I'm really sorry, like, that you have to go through that. I'm just gonna read some of the comments, and they're definitely coming in. Jocelyn, you're cute for a dark skinned girl. I mean, so it's almost as if dark skinned people are not attractive, and that Jocelyn, she is the exception. Isabella said, I always get that my English is great for being my second language. I was born in Colombia. I also get to ask if I'm a part of the cartel. Wow. So you just can't come out of Colombia and not be associated with the drug game. Nadia, I'm just curious, have you ever experienced any type of microaggressions?
Yes, I actually wrote in the chat a little bit. Kind of similar to the like, where are you from comment. A lot of people ask like, what are you? In sort of like a little bit of a rude way. Because they're just like, oh, are you Italian? Are you Spanish? Like what are you? And then I say that I'm half Lebanese, and then suddenly people get a little nervous, and then that opens up an entirely different conversation.
Interesting. Why do you think people get nervous about you being half Lebanese, though?
Well, some people may not even know exactly where it is geographically, but for the people that do, with it being in the Middle East, they kind of make some stereotypes with like terrorism, or I've had people kind of outright assume that I might be Muslim, but I'm not, and my father isn't even either, and he's the one from Lebanon. So there's just a lot of assumptions made. So I have to do like a lot of explaining.
Wow. Damn, like, wow, that's I mean, it's almost like, you're always put on this sort of you're always given this job of having to explain who you are. And
yeah, like right after I say like what the nationality actually is, it opens up a completely different conversation.
And it's like Nadia, she's just trying to just live her life and be great. Like, what I mean? It's, that I can definitely see how that could be very, very cumbersome. Diana says, why aren't you dark skinned like your mom? It's funny because, Diana, like, I've gotten the opposite. So, my mother, she's a fair skinned woman. And so people are like, oh my God, like, are you adopted? And I'm like, no, Black folks, we just come in different shades. These are, this is another good one. Lexi Ray says, you are beautiful. What are you mixed with? That's a very invasive comment, as if, she has to be mixed with something to be beautiful. So now I'd like to sort of I'd like to turn it around. What microaggressions have you perpetrated? And if no one wants to admit to one, I'll go first. So I was was reading this really awesome article in ESPN. It was about forget the team, and got to the end of it. I was like, oh my God, this guy wrote an amazing article. And my lady looks to me and she's like, how do you know it's a man? And so I scroll up to the top, and the author was a woman. And so it's almost like, well, I automatically jump to, it's impossible for a woman to write something this great about sports. So that's a microaggression, and that's a bias that I held. So let's be courageous here. I'm gonna call on Rebecca. Have you ever perpetrated a microaggression? Like, have you ever done something and that you've realized, oh wow, that wasn't okay?
I'm thinking, I'm sure I probably have. I don't have an obvious example that comes to mind in this moment. I think I have thought things like I think an admiring perceived ethnicity thought that like, oh, like I wonder, like what combination makes this beautiful person? And again, meaning it to be complimentary or from curiosity. I don't recall a time of saying it out loud. I have a good editor, but for sure I've thought that. For sure I've thought it. So I'm gonna think on this question a little more.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Like, we'll definitely come back to you. Melanie Garcia, have you ever perpetrated a microaggression at all?
I have, many years ago. I worked down at the World Trade Center,
Sure.
9/11, and I have some Egyptian colleagues that are Muslim.
Mhm.
It took me a minute to kind of like reconnect with them. We were out of work for some time, but it took me a minute to reconnect with them after we did return to work.
Okay. May I ask why is that?
Well, I was of the same mind and thought that many other folks have. All Muslims are terrorists at that moment because this is what we're being fed by the media. And it took me a minute. We used to go out to lunch before 9/11 and hang out after work. Before 9/11, everything was fine. But then after, I always found an excuse why not to have lunch at
Sure.
the time. And it, like I said, it took me a minute to own what I was feeling and come to terms with it because I knew them already and I knew their family and I knew that that's not who they were.
Okay. Wow. That's brave, Melanie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. What about Janice? Any microaggressions you may have perpetrated towards someone?
Yeah, the one that I've been thinking of during this session so far, especially, is the one where you compliment somebody who immigrated into America on how great their English is. And I did that many, many, many times over my life, never thinking that it would actually cause pain. And I realized that, just a few short years ago.
Okay, thank you. Wow. And thank you for owning that. Diana put a very interesting comment. She said, I don't like the fact that how some individuals always assume that Hispanics are stereotyped as lazy because most of us get government assistance. Listen, so I live in San Francisco, right? And we have a tremendous homeless population here, like many other big cities for various reasons. And we also have panhandlers. And I can tell you, I don't remember ever seeing someone who would identify as Hispanic being a panhandler, someone asking for money. Just that, to me, that boggles my mind, because it just doesn't happen. I mean, that really frustrates me. Let's go with one more. Jyoti, have you ever perpetrated a microaggression, or has someone ever ever perpetrated a microaggression against you?
I would say yes, both ways. I'm an
Okay.
immigrant in this country.
Okay.
I came 16 years ago from India.
Sure.
And I was very new to this culture. And so I think typically, obviously I'm not the same person. Well, I'm the same person, but, my perspective is definitely better on things. But, I remember first coming in and thinking, my first colleagues, like the first department I worked for at the University of Houston was 95% Black. And I was just like, this is going to sound really bad, y'all. Oh, wow, Black people are so smart. And I was like,
wow, Jyoti, I'm offended. No, I'm kidding. It's okay.
Well, my ex-husband is Black and he set me right on a lot of things. Like I had a huge learning curve and I was very grateful. We were married for 7 years. But, in India, coming from India, we're used to seeing Black people as like very athletic, things like that. That's usually like the stereotype. And when you're fresh here, it's like, whoa, there's a whole other side that you're not used to. And I learned fast. So.
Okay, thank you. So, and let me grab one more, grab one more comment. And Rebecca says, panhandling comment reminds me that I definitely rolled up my windows or locked car doors when passing by panhandlers at intersections. That's Rebecca, that's something that I believe that everyone has probably done. I could be dressed in a suit and sometimes people will just, pop them locks and I'm like, damn, like, I thought that I looked good, but I mean, those things happen though. So,
before you move on, two things. This in the full disclosure, when we were talking about, having this event, and hopefully she doesn't get mad at me, Rebecca and I both were like, what the heck is a microaggression? Sad, but we really kind of never heard that term be used, and it's not something that you hear all the time. So just to share that. And also there was a really good question in the chat, LeRon. I'm not sure.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. I'm getting ready to address that now. And to also follow up with how that this is microaggressions is a new comment. Well, we probably experienced these things a lot, but we didn't have the language like we have now. So even though the term microaggressions did originate in the 1970s, it's a term that has been given new life within the past several years. So it's one of those things where it's like, now that we have the language, now that we have the terminology, we can properly place it. So this was a really good question. Michelle asked, sometimes I'm genuinely curious about things, and I typically preface a question with, is it okay if I ask you a personal questions? And sometimes I explain that I notice an accent and I'm genuinely interested in the person and their background story if they would like to share. How can I do that without perpetrating a microaggression? Michelle, I think you just did it. I think that was a very respectful way of going about it, just by not assuming, because that's one of the things with a microaggression, is that you assume that this person is something, or that they don't have something, or that they do something without fully knowing. So I think that was a great way to approach that question. I mean, does anyone agree? Does anyone disagree? Allison, hey.
Yeah, hey. I was gonna say, so I'm part of the LGBT plus community, and often people are really invasive. So I often say, when you have questions like that, make sure it's phrased in a way where they can really say no. Like sometimes you're asking a question where, like, if somebody doesn't know how to get out of it, they just have to answer it. So like giving that option is helpful.
I like that. That's Allison, that's awesome. And also, can we make sure that these questions are in good faith? If these are bad faith questions just made to insult somebody to make them look stupid, then that's probably not what you really want to say. So Kevin, I appreciate this this comment. Sometimes I get nervous if I'm in an unfamiliar place and I see a group of young men of color approaching me by just walking towards me. Not all the time or even most of the time, but definitely happens. I'm sensitive to it, so I work to not feel that way. So I'm just curious, Kevin, why do you and this is for Kevin Wilhelm, why do you get nervous when you see a bunch of men of bunch of young men of color approaching you?
Certainly not from my lived experience. I think it's probably just from media and TV and movies and this, what gets perpetuated. And again, I don't think it doesn't happen most of the time, but definitely I've had those thoughts. And I'm not going to cross the street, but I'm still thinking about it conscious sometimes. And it's a perception I think built up over exposure to media, I think.
Okay. And so do you think that if there were more positive images of, and I can only speak from the perspective of being Black, but if there were more positive images of Black men, Black boys, do you think that you would hold those same assumptions?
Probably. I don't know. I wanted to make sure I put it out there, so I'm sort of feeling embarrassed and not really able to respond. I feel like I have to say the right thing. I know that's not what you're getting at, but I don't know if that's really the answer for me, is to see more. I feel like I do see positive images. So if I saw them more, would I be less likely to feel that way? I hope so. I guess so. But it's really, I shouldn't need to. My experience has not taught me that is a problem, and yet for some reason, every once in a while, there's a little bit of anxiety and nervousness there. And I have yet to, so I don't know. I mean, I don't want to push it all on the media. It's, I don't
know. Which is good that you don't do that. I'm just gonna one more comment on this, which by the way, thank you so much for everyone for jumping in. This is an awesome discussion. Amina, when you hear what Kevin is saying, like, how do you feel about that? I mean, how do you feel about his explanation and him crossing the street and so forth?
Well, I'm just going to start off by saying that I'm first generation American. So a lot of what we've even been taught, although people might perceive me, I mean, I am Black in an American context, but there's still embedded fear of Americanness that we were raised with. So he might cross the street, we might cross the street too, I think it definitely goes both ways. And I think it's kind of a byproduct of how American society has taught us to fear Blackness across the board.
Okay, all right, very good answer. No, I look, and we're gonna talk about race much later, but what Kevin has said is not uncommon. I mean, I think that if we're all honest, more often than not, almost everyone fears Black men, especially young Black men, because that's what's perpetuated. So how it's perpetuated is it is ingrained in us, and this is why we spout different microaggressions now, because Blackness is looked at as a negative, which is a really good segue into how we're going to talk about bias. So what bias is it? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hey, LeRon, we just had somebody raise their hand, so I believe that they would like to share something. Lexi Ray?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm a Black American, but I think that a lot of times that I can be fearful of my own race as well. But I think it's a matter of judging the socioeconomic background of that individual. So if they look like they might come from a little sketchier way because they are sagging, or the way they carry themselves, or I'll even say I've seen white people with a lot of tattoos, and I'm making an assumption that they're someone that's, you know, demonic or something for me. And so I try to avoid that person, and coming to find out they just really like tattoos, or they're just not as cultured enough to have been raised around someone to say, pull up your pants and, you know, speak a little bit more proper when you're addressing certain things or in the way you speak. And I think if they don't speak a certain way, then you make an assumption that they're stupid or whatever the case might be. Especially, I have a lot, you know, my ex-husband was from down south, and I made a lot of assumption hearing people with the Southern drawl that they weren't very educated, and they are some of the best educated people out there.
So, Lexi, I'm just curious, and thank you very much for sharing. Like, do you think that that's right? You know, how, you know, you may perceive someone as sagging pants as them being potentially violent, or someone that has a lot of tattoos as being violent. I mean, is that okay? Is that not okay?
No, I don't think it's okay, but I don't think you should be stupid either to be like, well, everybody's loving. Like, no, but then again, I've also have had older women that were walking a bit too close to me, and I'm like, back up, lady. I don't know if you're gonna take my bag. So I'm an equal opportunist in how I judge people, I guess. You know, I don't really, I think I get skeptical of everybody, because I think that everybody has a potential to be violent. I mean, but I don't know. I think it's just some inner feeling within me that just says, be a little bit more careful.
You know, I would actually like to stay on this for a little bit. You know, it's very interesting what Lexi and what, you know, Kevin has said, because those perceptions that gets young Black boys killed, that gets young Black boys accused of rape. So I think that I think that we need to truly examine why. Like, for an example, we would probably give a bit more grace to a young white woman who has different colored hair, who has piercings, who has tattoos, but we wouldn't give that same grace to, say, a Latina who looks like that, or to a Black woman. So in a sense, we have to examine these deep-seated, racist and bigoted beliefs. I mean, but, you know, at the same time, like Lexi, look, you know, I'm a man. I'm 6'2". I have broad shoulders. I'm not really going to get messed with if I'm walking down the street, and if I see some folk who are, you know, sagging their pants. You on the other hand, you may not experience that same interaction.
Well,
So,
I think,
yes.
well, I'll say, like, I work in corporate America, and because I have long nails, it's assumed that I'm not very knowledgeable.
Right.
Or if my hair is colored a certain way, that I'm a secretary. Like, you know, or I mean, I personally, like I said, if it's an older white woman and she's walking too close to me and she's looking at me, I'm gonna look back and I'm gonna grab my purse a little bit tighter.
Wow.
I mean, for me, I
you
get the
flip it
equal
on her, huh?
opportunity. Yeah, I mean, everybody gets it. So, you know, I mean, and I have 2 young Black boys that live down south with their father. So, I mean, you know, but I also make sure, I mean, I've witnessed that it doesn't matter how well our young Black men are dressed or presented, they're just equal targets because of the color of their skin.
100%.
You know, so, I mean, and like I've been perceived, I can be in Neiman Marcus walking around shopping with a Louis Vuitton, carrying a Louis Vuitton, and I can still ask, Can you tell me where the women's section is? No, I can't
Right.
because I don't work here.
Right. Yeah, no, like that happens to me quite a bit. Thank you for that, Lexi. Like, I love the exchange. I loved what Marie wrote. Marie M. I'm a proud mom of a trans woman, and it's been quite eye-opening to see how people ignore her pronouns or ask very personal questions of her. I try to give people grace, as in some cases, it comes from a place of wanting to learn versus wanting to be rude or insulting. Maria, do you mind speaking on that for a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, my daughter transitioned about 5 years ago, and it's been I think her experience is different than mine. And I think she will say, I'm just tired of having to explain who I am to people all the time. I shouldn't have to, people ask me questions, and it's not my job to explain who I am to you.
Right.
But I get questions from like our friends or whatever, and I kind of feel, and maybe it's a generational thing, I don't know. Like I feel like people my age maybe don't have as much exposure experience, and you can kind of tell where the question comes from. Is it coming from a place of like,
is it in good
wow, did
place?
she have surgery? Right. Wow, what is, or
Right.
Versus somebody who's saying, I just, don't understand. And so I think you can kind of sense where they're coming from and how you respond in kind.
Absolutely. That echoes what Allison said earlier. People need to ask a question, and that can result in a no. Many times microaggressions can be very invasive. Again, matter of fact, Allison, do you mind kind of expounding on like how invasive some of the questions that you've received, how they can be?
Sure. So I'm a bisexual cis woman, and I often have people like want to know, like, oh God, I'm trying to think of all of the phrases I've been thrown out. Which one of them is like, are you an active bisexual? I'm like, what does that mean? But it's like a weird thing that like multiple people have asked. I'm like, what does that mean? Or like I'll mention that I'm part of the LGBT plus community, and they're like, what? You have a boyfriend? Or like asking really specific sexual things when they find out I'm queer. So it's just this whole like this door that gets opened, kind of what Marie was saying, where it's like, are you here to learn, or are you here to like ask really awkward questions?
Right.
And it's the same thing when I'm like out with my friends, where like maybe I look more normal than some of my friends will, and then my friend is getting more questions than I am, and I'm like, what is happening here? Like, why even do it at all? So it's just this very strange, like, depending on who else is in the room, you kind of get targeted when you don't look standard. And I think
Right.
that's true across the board with a lot of these conversations. If you're the odd one out, people want to know why.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's, man, like great response. I'm just curious, Dulce, anything to add? Any experiences with microaggressions? Anything that you've heard that you agree with or didn't agree with?
Yes, I think especially with my last name, because Toppenberg, they think, where are you from? You're Latina, where you got that last name? And I say, oh my, that's, I think people, the way they act, I think there was rating like that. Everything's going on. So I don't put a lot of attention to it because, we learn, it's what is going on in this life now. The way the people was raised in this in the world, not in the United States, in the entire world. So
Right. No, thank you for that. I know that it can get very tiring, like with these questions, being put on the spot, having to explain who you are. It's just like what Marie said about her daughter. That can become very exhausting. Does anyone have any suggestions on how to shut those questions down?
Can I just add, in some cases, like I think when Allison was saying, are you an active it's like, well, are you an active heterosexual? Like, sometimes when you turn it around on people, or in my case, like my daughter's, questions about surgery and things. And I think, like, would you go up to somebody and ask them about, like, I don't know, hey, did you have a nose job? Or like, I mean, it's not the same, but to kind of say, like, why
Right.
would you think that that's okay to ask somebody that? And I think it depends on, like I said, where the comment's coming from. But sometimes if you kind of turn it around to people and they kind of go, oh yeah, I would not appreciate being asked that. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that, Marie. I liked what Jyoti said here. When I get into a political discussion, I get asked if I'm dual nationality to insinuate that I'm not a patriot or American enough. So it's some thinly veiled racism there, Jyoti, as if, you can't love America like the way someone who is born here can, though, or it's like, oh, Jyoti, she's got to be secretly cheering for the other side, right? I mean,
Yeah, and this happened a lot when I was in school right after 9/11. It's like, there was like this whole backlash against brown people and Arabic looking people. And I realized I was in this weird spot. It was like, oh, are you, like, we get into these discussions and suddenly, like, are you dual nationality? Like, you don't have the right to be arguing this point or whatever. And I have to tell them that I come from another democratic country and I gave up my citizenship there to be here.
right. Yeah, like, Jyoti's like, listen, like, I really love America, like, which is awesome. Yeah. So I love this question. Amanda asked, as someone who strives to be an ally and is on the learning journey, but also tries to educate others in my life who are less open, what suggestions do you have for dealing with people who do not believe in microaggressions or say we are being too PC? That's a great that's a great question. So if you've noticed, the term woke has been really sort of bastardized, and it's been tainted with this sort of negative connotation of someone being too PC, someone being too sensitive. Whenever I hear someone saying, "Oh, this world is too PC," I just think, oh, so you want to go back to the time where it was cool to be able to insult Black people, where it was cool to be just rageous sexist animal, where it was cool to not to use vicious words against the LGBTQ community. If a person says that, I would, well, first off, I would ask them, what do you mean? Because I always believe in staying in the question lane. I would ask them, okay, so what do you mean that we're being too PC? Why is it that when someone wants to go by a certain label, why does that affect you? I'll tell you a story. So years ago, when the pronouns started to become very popular, and I didn't understand why people would use them. There was no malice. I just thought that it was a bit goofy. And so it wasn't until I spoke with two parents that were parents of a trans person, and they explained to me how important the pronouns were. And it made me realize that just because I don't use them, just because I don't choose to identify with them, that doesn't mean that they are useless. That doesn't mean that they are silly. Because the thing about words is that words have power, right? And now in 2021, we have the terminology, we have the language to empower people. So we need to essentially allow people to live the life that they choose to live. And so when I realize that, I give grace and I give space to anyone who chooses to identify themselves as, he, him, she, her, they, them, because at the end of the day, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt me. It's just that their world is changing, and that they don't want to keep up, or that they feel that they're being left behind, which is not true. So in closing, to answer that question, I would simply ask them, well, what do you mean by this world is becoming too PC? Why does that bother you? We need to dig into that. Man, so this talk is just simply flying by. I'm loving the discussions on this topic. I'm going to try to get to some more of these questions here. So Michelle Williams says, I was always taught to be wary of people who are too familiar with you off the bat. It's sort of as if they do not have enough respect to maintain a bit of formality. Michelle, can you kind of break that down a little bit?
Hi, so my camera's not working. But my mother is, I don't know how to explain this. She's really reserved and private. And my father is like more friendly and outgoing, and opposites attract. But I learned from a young age, my mother was like, you just have to be careful. People are like really familiar right off the bat, and they start asking personal questions. Just you have the right to set a boundary and let them know that this is not like an appropriate time or place, or that's not something I really want to discuss right now. Something like that. Because I think if someone feels without really knowing you, that they could just start asking questions.
Right.
And then maybe you haven't asked them. I sort of like try and gauge it. I worked in the service industry for a long time. And I don't know, as a server, people just feel like they could just ask you anything. And like you're serving them and they're tipping you. So you kind of feel like you have to answer. And you're put in an awkward position because you don't want to, it's hard to like, or you pretend you're busy because you don't want to answer. But like, oh, is this all you do? Or are you going to school? Or, things like that. People ask questions and just make assumptions. And it's like, it's awkward sometimes. Like, it's okay to be a server like that. It's a job. I'm working, paying my bills, I'm supporting my family. But, so like in certain situations, people are very familiar because they're in that position where they can be. It's
Sure.
almost like a power play because
Right.
they can be because they're tipping you. So, but
Right.
like out in public, if people are just like, or excuse me, I'm sorry, starting a new job. My mom was like, you don't need to tell people everything about you, day one. Let
Okay.
them learn little bits here and there.
Right. So it's almost like because you're their server, they feel entitled to ask you that question.
Yeah, they're in a place of power, and you're below them because you're serving them.
Right. Yeah, like unfortunately, like I've years ago, like I've been that person. So I can definitely identify with that. So
I have a question, if you don't mind.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I guess kind of along those lines, I mean, I'm going to make a stereotype about Midwesterners, but I'm from the Midwest, and
Okay. Hold on, Ashley. Whoa, kidding.
yeah, we love to ask a bunch of very personal questions. Meaning I like to ask very personal questions, and I think about even just when I met my husband, I definitely asked things that were inappropriate. He's from India, and I like automatically assumed he was older than me and he already had children, which like, why would I ever ask those questions? But I'm sorry, I forgot the name or I didn't see the name of the woman who's just speaking. How do you, I guess, like, how do I stop myself from asking some of those, oh, what do you do? Or, I feel like I'm just trying to get to know someone, and that's like my version of small talk. And I don't know how to like not do that. And then I feel like I'm maybe being a little awkward in some of the questions that I am asking.
So I agree, because it's like a gray line. Like it's because I'm really outgoing and friendly, and because I have my dad's personality. But like, I don't know, sometimes you just feel uncomfortable, and it's like, how do you express to the person who asked the question? And working in a restaurant, I mean, I'm serving people who may have been, had a few drinks, and they're just, there's like a lot of reserve, you know. And so I also served tables while I was pregnant, and lots of people touched my belly, and I just did not appreciate it. So I would just find ways to like walk a different, like approach from a different angle so they couldn't get to me, or have somebody else bring my food over, or pretend I was busy. And it's like, how do you set the boundary? It's awkward, you know, if you just really don't want to answer the question, but you sort of feel like some days I was really chatty, but then other days I just didn't feel it. I just didn't want to answer that question.
Yeah.
You know, Ashley, there's I actually want to comment on Janice's comment before we go to the breakout room. Another microaggression example: women being interrupted by or talked over by men, which unfortunately I did the same thing to Ashley. I apologize. Research has shown this is especially common in situations where women are outnumbered by men. So I have been in tech for over 20 years. And, you know, tech is a notoriously sexist environment. And, you know, I've been in plenty of meetings where men will not only talk over women, but we will not even ask them for their feedback, ask them how they think about something. You know, this is definitely a deep-seated bias, and it's a great example of a microaggression. I mean, what's sad about this, y'all, is like most men don't even realize that we do it. For me, what I try to do is that whenever I'm in a meeting, I always try to call on women, because again, like my team currently has one woman, right? And so that's just because tech is not a very friendly environment. So that's just something that I do. You know, I'm always like, hey, Karen, how do you feel about this? Mary, what are your thoughts? You know, just to make my colleagues know that, hey, I haven't forgotten about you. And I know that you know, all the women here, especially Jyoti, can probably comment on mansplaining, you know, as well as whitesplaining. So I'd like to call on someone that I have not heard from before we go to break. I'm sorry, before we go to the breakout room. Erica, have you ever experienced a microaggression? Have you ever been talked over? I know that's like asking you, is water wet? But I'm just curious. Any thoughts on what I just said?
Yeah, actually, I would agree. And I actually agree with Janice's point as far as that. I would add another layer to that too. Is not only someone talking over you, which has happened to me plenty of times, but oftentimes you will find in a male-female dynamic where you will say something as a female and the male will come back and say the same thing you said in a different way and own it.
Take the credit.
His idea.
Take the credit.
Exactly.
You know, Erica, I don't believe you. I don't think that a man would ever do that. Kidding. joking. No, like I seen that happen very recently. Brenda, any thoughts on what Erica just said?
Yes, I've experienced that same situation, being in a meeting, expressing an idea and a thought, and everyone says okay, but then when a male counterpart says the same thing, it's like rockets just went off, and and I'm left looking like, but I just said the same thing, you know. So yes, I've personally experienced that.
Wow. Yeah. No, like it's just men. We just don't know when to shut up. Basically. Rebecca, and do y'all mind if we jump into the breakout rooms a little early?
For it.
Fantastic. Okay, and if we can, and so this breakout room, what we're going to do is we're going to reflect and discuss the number one thing that you heard that resonated with you, and something that you're leaving with. And then we're going to come back and we're going to reflect on that, and we're going to talk about it. And I would just love to just hear everyone's everyone's thoughts. And I don't want to have anyone feel like that they are not heard. I'm a big proponent on everyone telling their story and everyone having a chance to talk. So if you have not been heard after the breakout room, please let me know, and let's get you on the mic. All right. Looks like we're coming back. So once again, I had the best breakout room. Kate and I, we talked about the event as well as life in Connecticut. Sorry that y'all were not privy to that conversation, because it was very cool. So I just want to say, first off, like, this is the most engaged group that I've ever had in my life, as far as doing these presentations. You all have been incredible. We only have a couple minutes, but I would really like to just if I can just hear from three people very briefly, what have you taken from this session? Anybody's free to jump in. Jackie.
Yeah. I think, from my perspective, I grew up in a very middle class, nice little Connecticut town, not a lot of diversity. So in part, I think microaggressions, they do occur to me because I'm a woman, but also I think recognizing my own is the most important part. And coming to things like this to educate myself tends to be the best way to go about it. Only until I left Connecticut and moved to Albany for 4 years did I realize, the things that had come from my upbringing that I was not recognizing. And I luckily had allies, but it's not just the people who are able to correct me, but being able to correct myself. So hearing all of your experiences and being able to, internalize them and to take a second before saying things and making sure it's the right thing to say moving forward has to be the biggest takeaway from this. And it has been really, really great. So thank you.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Karen, Karen Lott. I have not heard from you all night, and I've been wanting to call on you. Any comments, any reflections, things that you can take away from this event?
Yeah, I shared in the breakout group that one of the things that really resonated with me is my own set of microaggressions that I've kind of been operating in, given this climate of racial discord that's happened in our country, given what's happened with the insurrection at the Capitol and some of the political things, that I've really been carrying around like these microaggressions about white men and white women and how they might be a Trump supporter, how they might support some of these racist views that are going around. And it's left me just like really uncertain about friend or foe, right? Who's okay and who's not, who looks at me as a person or who might look at me through their own set of microaggressions or stereotypes. So that's just kind of it's been good because it's given me a place to kind of put all of that in a box and really understand my own feelings a little better.
Okay, thank you. Rebecca, do we have time for one more person?
Sure.
Okay, any last person that would love to hear from you. How about my favorite person, Jyoti? Anything that you like to take away from this event?
Yeah, I mean, I think we come from so many different backgrounds, and it's great that on one level, to be curious and that we want to learn. And I think microaggressions are contextual too. Like Ashley said, coming from India, like I think I was probably a little invasive towards, people asking them questions because I was genuinely curious. And sometimes, I get that curiosity in my direction as well. And so really, for me, it's trying to see the intent behind the question or the statement. Why do you think that? Or why do you feel that way? Like probably, leading with some curiosity instead of maybe, defensiveness or just judgment that I'm, feeling microaggression, because I don't think people are going to feel brave enough to kind of feel curious to learn more about each other, or, force themselves to be politically correct if we don't feel kind of safe to do that. So maybe expanding our circle of people who we interact with, but also kind of coming from a place of curiosity. And hopefully if the other person is not defensive about, hey, like I didn't mean it this way or whatever, but, genuinely trying to learn, then we can have an open dialogue. So that's my takeaway.
Wonderful. I'll give it back to you, Jessica, and the team. I'm sorry. Yes, Jessica, Rebecca, and Amanda.
Thank you, LeRon. Just in closing, we wanted to thank you all for participating tonight and for joining us. We knew going into this could be a very sensitive topic, but we're happy that you all were willing to open up and share your experiences. And hopefully everybody here is leaving with something tonight. A huge thank you to LeRon for creating space for all of us. Please be sure to follow LeRon, his socials, if you want to keep up on any other talks that he has coming up. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at LeRon Barton. Also, we will be sending out a post-event survey. Be sure to fill out that survey so we can really see what people liked about this event and maybe what to do in the future. And also, we encourage you to please keep this conversation going within your own networks, and also on our social pages. You can go to the event page and leave your comments about, what you say or what you want people to know. So again, thank you guys all for making this event so successful tonight, and we really appreciate everybody being so open.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
So much.
Bye.
Thank you all.